Hello, thanks for joining me. This is Jessie, and this is my channel, The Caffeinated Bookworm. So, I don't really have too much to update you about me and my reading this week. I'm still reading Level Zero by Dan McDowell, and I'm also still reading Dead House Gates, which is the second book in the series, the Malazan Book of the Fallen by Stephen Erickson. So when I have light, so it's basically during the day, I'm reading Level Zero because Level Zero is a physical book that I'm reading. And then when I lay down to go to bed at night, so that I don't keep John up with the light reading a physical book, I will pull up my phone and read some more in Dead House Gates. So I'm chugging along on those a little bit at a time. And then I kind of fell down the rabbit hole of watching people's reactions to Ghost Love Score by Nightwish. Or more specifically, the version with Floor Jansen from the Vaughn in 2013. There's a whole bunch of videos of people reacting to that song, and I love Nightwish. They're one of my favorite bands. And I don't know why I found it so fascinating to watch people react to her singing. But then I kind of fell into it. So I sent it to my boss, Brian, to watch during our one-on-one. So that was fun. So just a couple of things. JeremyFee has tagged you all in the book shopping tag, and I will link his video below. And I guess the original tag was Scientist Reading World tag. You're all tagged. So I am also going to be posting a book shopping tag video here shortly. Speaking of tags, Michael K. Vaughn posted his Can You Adapt It tag. He was tagged by Steve Reads Books and Stuff, who is the same person who tagged me. I will link both of those videos below. And Steve was originally tagged by Raul Reads, and I will link that one below as well. Speaking of Steve Talks About Books and Stuff, he did an author interview with H.B. Diaz, who is the author of Nocturne, a collection of dark tales. And that was really, really good. So I recommend going and checking that out. He's also going to be doing a review of Nosferatu by Joe Hill. I've already read this, and I'm hoping to get through Dead House Gates and Level Zero here soon so that I can kind of get back into that. I want to read it again so that I can discuss it with him. But he does have a channel. It's not Discord. It's Creeping Death, maybe. It's linked through his videos, so definitely go ahead and check that out. Merphy Napier has posted her review on the first book of the Malazan Book of the Fallen series, Gardens of the Moon, and I absolutely adored that video. Her reactions to some of the things that happened in the first book are just unparalleled. Go watch the video. I promise you won't regret it. Chronicles of Noria has released a unboxing of her March Fairloot, and I love her. I love listening to her talk. I love listening to her review books. I love listening to her rants. I love listening to her cuss. And she at one point says that y'all come to her channel to enjoy the chaos, and that's really kind of sums it up. She's funny. Go check her out. I absolutely love watching her. I could watch her videos all day long. Gaia Athena reviewed Inkheart. And I want to go back and read the Inkheart trilogy. I've read it before, and the only thing that I got out of reading the trilogy was that I hated the movie because it didn't do the trilogy justice, but now I can't really remember the trilogy, so eventually I'm going to get back to that. So they weren't that long either. They were kids' books. So I don't think that it would take me too long to get through them. So maybe I'll read them in between some of the other books that I've got lined up. Paperback Junky, where are you? I know you said you were moving because you posted a video that said it was your last video that was going to be at that location. But I haven't seen anything in like 5 days. It's been like a week. So you kind of went AWOL. So everybody go bug Paperback Junky when he comes back and leave him some love on his videos. Iskar Jarak posted another video, his episode 15 on Memories of Ice, and those are always fantastic. I love watching his videos. And this is like, this is still new to me. So going back and watching videos is really, it's keeping the story with me. And so as we move from character to character, I'm getting more comfortable with the movement from place to place, person to person. And it's really interesting. And so if you are reading the Malazan Book of the Fallen series with any of the read-alongs that are going on right now, and I think the main one is still the one from Mike's Book Reviews channel, go back and look at some of the videos that have been posted for the books that you've finished. So if you finished the Gardens of the Moon, go back and watch some of the Gardens of the Moon reviews. They're all really good. If you're on Memories of Ice, go back and watch some of the Dead House Gates reviews. I'm having so much fun with this. And I'm really looking forward to like some more like read-alongs in the future that have a whole bunch of people from the BookTube community kind of posting their thoughts and opinions after they read the book. It's really, really enjoyable. And Iskar Jarak is the go-to guy when it comes to this series. So go check him out. David Wiley has released his May TBR list, and he has listed some May the Force Read With You books, as well as some Star Wars books. And I think he's also going to be reading Poppy Wars. And he's asked for some recommendations. He's also going to be reading a Shakespeare piece. So go check out his channel if you're interested in any of that, because I bet he would love to have some conversations about those. And finally, well, one more thing before finally. So I am actually going today to go get my first vaccine shot. I don't know how I feel about this. I am not an anti-vaxxer, but I am a keep it simple, stupid vaxxer, if that makes any sense. Like, I got my recommended vaccines. My kids got their recommended vaccines. I don't go get the flu shot. I think the only shot that I have voluntarily gotten that was not like, you have to have this for whatever purposes, school, whatever, was the whooping cough shot. And that was after I had one of my kids. It had never been offered to me before. But after I had one of my younger kids, the pediatrician asked me if I wanted it. And so I think it might've been Sophia, my last kid that I had in 2013. So I had that shot at the time. And since then, the only vaccine that I've had was my tetanus shot in 2018. And so I've been kind of debating this, you know, especially after the Johnson & Johnson scare. It feels to me like it's really, really rushed. I know a lot of people who have had some reactions to the regular shot, the one that gives you two. I forgot the name of the company who did it. But we are unfortunately now among the people who know somebody who has died due to COVID. And John has been kind of pushing for me to go get it, and seeing his reaction to the death of that person has kind of swayed me towards getting the vaccine. And so I have scheduled it today, and I will be going and getting my first shot today. So hopefully I don't get any reactions. And actually, no taekwondo tonight, because the taekwondo instructor, they just sent out an email stating that he had his second COVID shot and he is suffering from some severe reactions to it. And so that definitely didn't help me, but I've already got it scheduled. They've given me some time off from work to go get it. And I've told you before, I'm at my father-in-law's house. My father-in-law lives here with his brother who is older than him. I would hate to be that person who got COVID and then gave it to them, because I've heard of people getting COVID even after they get their shots. And so anyways, that's neither here nor there. Sorry, I didn't mean to make this a thing. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I am going to give you some books that were sent from off the shelf. They have compiled a list of 9 memoirs that handle mental health with bravery and compassion. And mental health is one of those things, because, you know, there's more than one of those things that have been swept under the rug for so long, kept in the shadows for so long, you know, whispered in hushed tones for so long. there's not going to be a ceiling. You can't hit that ceiling where you say, okay, we've talked about mental health enough. It's not going to happen. And so I will link the article below from Off the Shelf as well if you want to check out those books. But I'm going to be going over the synopsis of those with you. Everything is Fine by Vince Granada. This is a difficult and tragic book that details the author's experience after his schizophrenic brother murdered their mother. It is not an easy book to read, and it made me cry on more than one occasion, but it is worth reading. Vince recounts where he was when he learned what happened to their mother and of Tim's unchecked illness. Part memoir and part journalistic deep dive into mental illness and schizophrenia, Vince examines the impact it has had on his life, while also coming to terms with his family and finding love for his brother. This book will move you and shock you, but the compassion that Vince has for Tim is beyond incredible. It sounds like a really, really intense book, but I think that out of all the ones on here, that is probably going to be the one that I pick up first. Just the way that it sounds, like having to still be in contact with somebody, and somebody so close, it's his brother. And so this can be taken through so many different levels, not just somebody, who has schizophrenia and killed your mother and this is your brother, but, people who have had relationships with addicts, and, stayed through that, stayed by them, kind of understand, how hard it is to move past that and still love them, still have compassion for them. I think it's easier to see and comprehend and imagine if it's somebody else, and you're not really part of that whole situation. But when it's close to you, it becomes a different creature entirely. And so it's like, you have this picture in your head of how you would react in certain situations, and then you're in that situation and you don't react how you expected at all. I used to work for a gas station, and I was robbed at gunpoint back in the early 2000s. And in my head, I had always been like, if I ever get robbed, I'm going to chase them down. They're not taking my money. But when I did get robbed, it was different. I had a 2-year-old at the time. They tell you not to look at them because it makes them nervous. And I couldn't stop staring at him. And I was like, please don't shoot me. I have a son. I just dumped the money in because he had one of those little coolers that people take their lunches in. And that's what he pulled the gun out of and told me to put the money in there. And then after he left, I forgot to hit the alarm button. I sat down on the floor and I just started bawling. And then I remembered the alarm button and I hit the alarm, and then Central started looking through the cameras, and they were like, oh, are you okay? And I told them what happened, and they sent the police and the ambulance over. And so, you never know how you're going to react in certain situations. And so it's easy to say, if I had, a sibling or a partner or a parent or a child who suffered from schizophrenia, depression, bipolar, addiction, whatever, it's easy to say you'll react in a certain way, but you don't know until you're in that situation. Aftershocks by Nadia Owusu. Identity can be such a key factor in mental health, especially when you are desperately trying to figure out exactly who you are, which is exactly what Nadia explores in Aftershocks. After being abandoned by her mother as a toddler and moving around constantly with her father and her stepmother, then being raised by her stepmother after her father died, Nadia has always felt lonely. By the time Nadia went to university in America when she was 18, she felt as though she had so many personas inside her she could barely keep it together. As she compares the events in her life to the aftershocks of an earthquake, her writing is poetic and powerful and sure to captivate any reader. And that sounds amazing as well. You hear about PTSD usually with regards to the military, somebody comes back from war and, they're suffering from PTSD. And the number of veterans who have gone to protect this country and come back and feel like they have no one backing them and like they have no worth. You look up the number of veterans who commit suicide on an annual basis, it is staggering and unbelievably heartbreaking. But also, if you look up the number of farmers who commit suicide, that's even scarier, because you hear of veterans committing suicide and there's no this is worse than the other here. I'm just mentioning that you might hear about veterans and the suicide issue there more than you do about farmers. But if you look up the number of farmers who commit suicide, also, it's devastating. Featherhood by Charlie Gilmore. An almost dead and abandoned magpie resonates with Charlie Gilmore as he learns that his eccentric father, who deserted him and his mother when he was just 6 months old, is dying. Despite finding love from his adoptive father, Charlie has always wanted to know more about his biological father, Heathcote Williams. Featherhood is told with a dual narrative of Charlie attempting to connect with Heathcote over the years and also him attempting to nurture and then eventually bonding with his rescued magpie, Benzine. Throughout these experiences, Charlie worries and wonders about the kind of father he will be if Heathcote's struggle with mental illness will one day affect him as well. Featherhood is intense, bizarre, and moving as Charlie searches for answers. House of Sticks by Lai Tran. House of Sticks is an emotional experience in the form of beautifully heartbreaking prose. This is Lai Tran's coming-of-age story as a Vietnam immigrant growing up in Queens. Barely able to make ends meet, Lai remembers sewing ties and cummerbunds on the living room floor and struggling through half her life without glasses because her father believed poor vision to be a government conspiracy. Tran's life is filled with tragedy and generational trauma as she tries to understand who she is outside of her family's expectations. And so as I'm reading these to you, I just kind of skimmed this earlier and I didn't realize that this was probably going to be up there on the list as well of the ones that I'm going to try to read first. That's something that also we don't think of. I think that when we think of marginalized people on the outskirts of society, people who have mental illness, I think there's this exclusivity that comes into play. And so when you think about immigrants, the first thing that comes to mind is not mental health. And so this sounds like this is going to start that conversation. Like, you don't know what it's like, or maybe you do, and maybe this will help you because you're not alone. From the Ashes by Jessie Thistle. Addiction is a very serious illness that From the Ashes does not shy away from. The trauma that Jessie Thistle witnessed and overcame makes From the Ashes such a fitting title for this memoir. After being abandoned by his parents as a toddler, spending time in the foster system, and then eventually living with his grandparents, Jesse was haunted by the ghost of his father's addiction. He frequently pushed back against his grandparents' tough love approach and eventually entered the vicious cycle of drugs, alcohol, and petty crime. Jesse succumbed to his struggles cyclically until he realized that unless something changed, this life was going to kill him. In From the Ashes, Jesse chronicles the racism, prejudice, homelessness, and other abuse that he has experienced in his life, and how he found his way back to his Indigenous heritage and family to find love and support. Indigenous heritage. So that kind of reminds me of The Firekeeper's Daughter. If you haven't read The Firekeeper's Daughter, I got that as an ARC, and I think I've mentioned this on a number of occasions before because I got the ARC, and then I also got a book club kit that came with some bookmarks that John had laminated for me. But that touches on how drugs infiltrated a small community of Indigenous people. And it was a really, really good book. A History of Scars by Laura Lee. A History of Scars is told through a collection of essays detailing Lee's own experiences with trauma, intimacy, sexuality, and mental illness. She also tackles grief, the experience of her mother's early onset Alzheimer's, and what it was like to grow up queer in an immigrant household. These are deeply emotional yet incredibly relatable essays about facing ourselves and our truths. That one also sounds like a powerful book. Like Crazy by Dan Matthews. This memoir is funny and heartbreaking, and sometimes I feel that I use those words too often when describing books. Boiled down, there are the two essential characteristics of Like Crazy, which reads like a tribute to Matthew's mother eccentricities, illness and all. I read that sentence wrong. Boiled down, those are the two essential characters of Like Crazy, which reads like a tribute to Matthew's mother, eccentricities, illness and all. Wild child Dan Matthews had recently purchased a dilapidated Victorian home when his mother was diagnosed with COPD. Realizing that it was finally his turn to step up and care for her, he brought her to Virginia to permanently live with him. But together, they continued to be wild, hosting elaborate costume parties, taking road trips, and facing down Mother Nature. It wasn't until a violent ER visit that his elderly mother received another life-changing diagnosis. She had lived her entire adult life with undiagnosed schizophrenia. Darkly comical and full of compassion, Like Crazy doesn't shy away from mental illness, but finds that truth and humor can exist together. That reminds me, Look Me in the Eye by John Elder Robison is about a man who was diagnosed with Asperger's late in life. And that is such an amazing book. It's got to be one of my favorite books. It's definitely one of my favorite memoirs, if not my favorite memoir. I highly recommend reading that book. Heavy by Keith Lehman. While Keith Lehman uses his body to illustrate the abuse he suffered, he also uses it to explore the reality of American society, of being Black in America. What does it mean to grow up in a society, in a country that believes in progress, but does not want to go through the uncomfortable and messy work for equity and equality that would achieve this? This memoir explores these questions and much more, including sexual abuse, gambling, struggles with body image and eating disorders, and the complex relationship with his mother and grandmother. Lehman also begs everyone to examine how they love and what it means to love responsibly. Lehman's experiences are vastly different from mine, and while I can describe and recommend this book, his voice is more powerful enough to stand on its own, and it should be. Heavy was written to his mother, but has been shared with the world. I'm reading this again from an article, and so these are not my reviews. These are somebody else's reviews. And then the final book is Group by Christy Tate. Group is entertaining and unconventional, but it absolutely deserves a spot on this list as Tate embarks on a journey of self-discovery, intimacy, and hope. While the idea of this type of group therapy may not appeal to everyone, and Tate herself was very skeptical at first, it gave her an opportunity to break down her barriers and finally learn what it means to connect. Tate chronicles her time as a law student and a young lawyer dealing with intrusive thoughts and an eating disorder as she joins one of Dr. Rosen's psychotherapy groups. All she must do is show up and be honest. It kind of reminds me of another book, The Girls at 17 Swan Street. It's about, it's not a true story. It's another YA novel, but it deals with eating disorders and ballet, and what people go through after they check into a rehabilitation facility for eating disorders. So that's another book you might want to add to your to read list. And this is not on the topic of mental health, but it is on the topic of memoirs. If you haven't read Just Mercy, I know there's been a lot of talk about that over the last year or so. It broke my heart 10 million different ways, and it is a phenomenal book. I do recommend that book, and it is about the justice system, the jails and prison systems in America, especially pertaining to Black America, and it is the journey and stories of one lawyer who fought to change that, and some of the people that he came into contact with who are on death row. It was really brutal. I read it for the book club that I was in at my job. And so that's something you might want to also pick up. Sorry, I didn't realize that this was going to take such a dark turn and that I was going to end up almost crying on video. And so we're going to try to avoid that. I don't want to cry on video because I ugly cry, like ugly cry. So that is it for my Friday wrap up. It was a lot longer than I was expecting it to be. So you have a beautiful Mother's Day to all you mothers out there. Have a wonderful Mother's Day, and happy Mother's Day to my own beloved, amazing, beautiful, wonderful, cherished mother. I miss you so much. She's in Texas. She's probably not going to see this. She doesn't YouTube or anything. I miss her so much. But I will see her in July when we go down there for a visit. And so cherish your own mothers, call them and tell them you love them. And you all have a wonderful day.